It's time to turn your life-challenging moments into life-changing messages. Welcome to the Power Lift Stories podcast, where we are interviewing women whose stories will leave you lifted up, fired up, and fueled up with hope, courage, and inspiration. We want to thank our sponsor, Powerful Journey, who helps women tell their stories, write their books, and building a profitable brand around both. Join the masterclass or the Speakers Academy at phyllisjenkins.com. That is PHYLLISJENKINS.com. Now here's your host, Phyllis Jenkins.
Hello, everyone, and I am so excited to be back with you. And today's guest is Meridith Alexander, who has an amazing story that's going to truly, truly bless your hearts. But before I bring Meridith in, I just want to share that she is a peak performance coach. Meridith is an inspirational speaker, and you'll see why, at the Grit Mindset Academy. And she is the a lead agent at the Agency for Creative Talent Strategies. Meridith lives in Tampa, Florida. She has been blessed to be able to share her story on NBC, ABC, and several other main platforms that is able to spread her message. And that's why we have you here today, Meridith. I want you to come on in and share a little bit more, and then we'll just roll with it.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to all of you who are listening and spreading your light around the world.
Yes. So Meridith, I do want to, before you get into your story, if you were to give your story a title, what would the title be?
I love that question. You kind of shared with me that you might be asking something like that, and really I was torn between two titles. So one would be Embrace Your Boulders, and the other would be From Impossible to I'm Possible.
Love both of those. I love them. And once you go into your story, they'll know why you said embrace your boulders. So that's a great lead way into sharing your story. And if there's anything else that you want to share about Meridith before you do that.
You know, I guess that what I would share is that I believe that we all have powerful stories, and we're all far more similar than sometimes it may appear on the outside. And if I have taken away nothing from the last 10 years of my life other than this one thing, it's that ordinary people have so much greatness within them, and their unique greatnesses, right? And when we learn to embrace that greatness within ourselves, to own it, to love it, to thank God for it, then it allows us to not only share our greatness with each other, but to realize that when we take my unique greatness and your unique greatness and all the unique greatnesses of everyone who's listening and everyone in the world, then that's when the magic happens. That's when we have impossible things becoming I'm possible things.
I love that, because when that occurs, that means we're all walking in the purpose in which God created us to walk in that unique purpose that He has for all of us. So beautifully said. Love that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, let me share with you how this reference to boulders that we keep mentioning. And I want, if you're listening to this, I want you just to imagine a busy Friday afternoon and being in the whirlwind of your business, of your life, and then all of a sudden the phone rings, because that's what it was like for me. February 19th, 2016, it was my busy season. I was heading out to walk the dogs and the phone rang. And I almost didn't even pick up that phone, but something told me that this was one of those critical moments. And so I walked over to the phone, looked at it. It was an international number, which I thought, what? This can't be right. And I answered the phone, and the inhale of the breath on the other side of the line conveyed to me instantly that from that moment, my life would never be the same. Mm. And that voice on the other side said, I don't know how to tell you this, but Skylar has been in a critical accident. A boulder had broken loose from the side of a mountain when she was on a rafting trip, and they were swimming in a grotto. And it had broken away as they were climbing up this little cliff to jump off a ledge. And so that boulder crushed her skull, knocked her off the cliff onto the boulders below, crushed her lungs, fractured her spine, fractured both scapulas, snapped her right thigh in half, and pulverized her left ankle. So I was told to get on an airplane as quickly as possible, and that these heroic doctors in Colombia, South America, were going to do their best to keep her alive long enough so that I would arrive in time to say that one final goodbye to this amazing child.
Wow. I can't even imagine receiving a phone call like that, and Skylar, your daughter, being so far away. The thoughts that you tackled or embraced as you took that, how long was that flight?
Well, that's part of the magic, I believe, in this story. That's part of the miracle in this story, because one thing that I have come to know more deeply and profoundly than anything is that sometimes God delivers life's most powerful gifts wrapped up looking like your greatest challenges. And this was certainly one of those cases, because what it did was it gave me the opportunity to literally spend hours up in the heavens at 30,000 feet asking myself some powerful questions. And one of those questions became, what am I going to make this mean in the context of not only my life, but my daughter's life? And was I going to allow this boulder to reduce all the amazing things that my daughter had done in her 22 years, more than many people do in 80 years? Was I going to allow this boulder to totally crush all of that and leave us only with the story that I was the mother of a child who'd been killed by a boulder at an early age? And of course, the answer was no, right?
Yes. What an amazing question to glean on while you're in the heavens, as you said. Oh my goodness, what a great question. Wow.
It became a powerful question, and I think that is, again, that's one of the so many gifts in this experience for both of us. And I say both of us because by asking those new questions, and one of the new questions became, how can I find my power? How can I find out of this perfect storm of negative emotions? How can I find anything vaguely resembling the greatness that my daughter needs right now in order to be one of those miracle stories that we hear about, right? And so the answer to that was given to me was, all I needed to do was ask, right? Ask and is given. Yes. But it's the questions that you ask that influence the answers that you get. Yes?
Absolutely.
So one of the questions I began asking was, had anyone throughout time ever achieved anything that was impossible? Well, clearly the answer was yes. I was flying in one of those things, right? And then I began asking myself, well, have miracles ever happened? And once again, clearly the answer was yes. And so the next question became, well, what's the common factor here? And it always came down to a level of faith or focus or mindset.
Yes.
Right? That
Yes.
inner game.
The things that we tell ourselves. So you're in Colombia, you've made it to the hospital, you're there with your daughter, Skylar, and what happens next?
Fortunately, it had taken hours and hours, 2 long plane rides and a 4-hour drive through the mountains. And so I had gotten myself to a place, one little thought at a time, where I was able to inch my way from despair to a little bit of hope, hope to a little bit of belief, and then belief to this place of profound knowing and love and confidence and expectation that is what I believe people call faith. And really from that moment, it began to look as if life had to conform to that vision. I knew without question that Skylar and I were destined for more. This was not the end. This was the beginning. And now it was up for me to embrace it as such. So I arrived not this hysterical mom, but I arrived calm. I arrived feeling supported. I arrived feeling focused. And really from that first moment, the miracle upon miracle upon miracle. I mean, there's not enough time in this podcast to tell you all the miraculous things. I got to the point where I said, I would be more surprised if we didn't see that miracle than the fact that we're seeing yet another one. So we were able to fly her to Miami, and we were able to put her in the care of some of the best doctors in the world.
And I want you to take us into that hospital room back in Miami when the team of doctors, those that were the best of the best, walked in, and their news wasn't exactly what you wanted to hear, and you helped to turn it around. Can you share that with our listeners?
Sure. This moment that you're talking about was really one of the defining moments, and it created a bond between those doctors. And yes, that, like you said, these doctors were like the Olympians in the field of neurosurgery. They had come from all over the world. They were all ages. And I think collectively, really, they had hundreds and hundreds of years of experience. And later they would share with me that if Skylar's case had not been the most complicated they'd ever seen or worked on, it was one of the top 3. And that the injuries that she had were textbook impossible to survive from. And right down to the head injury that she had went back to a precedent that was more than 2,000 years old of Hippocrates saying that if you could see a patient's brain, they do not survive, and clearly could. So these doctors were facing something that medical precedent said cannot be done. And they were facing the mom. And they had to somehow convince me that they would give it a whirl, but prepare me for what was most likely the inevitable. And so they walked into that room very, very heavy. You could see they were pale, their shoulders were slumped. They couldn't make eye contact with me, and they began to try to to start what we were up against. And that my sense of power, my sense of faith was so strong that I describe it like I share with some of my clients. And sometimes when you're so overwhelmed and you're facing something so big that everyone else around you is saying impossible, you have to adopt the mindset that creating a miracle is far more important than giving in this moment. And you have to hear, but not listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I said to them was, I appreciate that. However, we are here at the best trauma center in the world. You are the best of the best doctors. We have the best medical technology. I know that my daughter is going to be fine, whatever that new fine may be. We just have to figure out how we're going to get her there. And you could see the worry, the fear literally melt off of them. Their shoulders went back. Their voices became more powerful. They began focusing on becoming the best version of themselves. And that was such a gift to me of learning that we can choose to be whatever version of ourselves we opt for. But when we tap into that power of that inner game and marry that with everything that we have at our disposal on the outer game, even the sky isn't the limit.
Love, love, love that. It was as if you, the mother, was building them up to do what they had been trained to do and were capable of doing. I love it, Meridith, how God used you in that moment to turn the talk around and to bring it back to where it needed to be for that miracle to start. And love, love, love that.
And I think that is super powerful. And that's why I think we're not a planet of just one, right? We are here more powerful for each other.
Yes.
Right. And that's why sometimes when we are feeling overwhelmed, when we are feeling like we're facing odds that are insurmountable, we need to uplift each other. We need to be willing to be vulnerable and sometimes ask for clarity, ask for help, or be willing to share our stories, just because hearing each other's journey, that carries the gems, I think, of our life crown. It just makes us so much more powerful.
It does. And I often say that our stories are not for us. They're not for us to sit on. Our stories are for us to go and share with others, as a power lift, as our title is, to become the tool in somebody else's survival kit, someone else who is walking through the very same shoes that you have walked through. Your story can be that moment of power lifting that they need to hear, of encouragement, of hope, inspiration, to move them to the next level of being able to move forward and to flourish forward. So as we speak now, give us an update, if you would,
Sure.
on how things are going. And yes.
So Skylar ended up surviving the unsurvivable, and I became her 24/7 with caregiver, which of course, I wasn't trained for caregiving. I was one of those who, as a little girl, thought maybe I would be a stewardess, but as soon as I found out you had to have a shot, anything vaguely associated with blood, I was like, no way, right? But here I was with my beautiful 22-year-old, who now could not sit up on her own, could not eat, could not swallow, could barely talk, all kinds of things that were just overwhelming. And also at the same time, it devastated my business because you can't make, we'd been in the ICU for 4 months. You can't make cold calls. And I was a solopreneur. You can't make cold calls in a busy season from the ICU. I learned that very quickly. And so life clearly had another calling for us. We were destined, like I said, for more.
Mm-hmm.
But the adventure here became, what is that? What is that? And so people began to reach out, because one of the parts of that faith, of that investing in the inner game, was also investing in the energy behind that inner game, and understanding that where my focus as her mom had to be was on the presence of what I wanted, not on the lack of the presence, but the presence of what we wanted here. And that meant, to a certain extent, making sure that everybody else who was focusing on Skylar had that same power behind their focus as well. And so it became obvious immediately that I wasn't going to be able to verbally touch base with people. So I started this tiny little Facebook page called Sky is the Limit, spelled like her name, SCHUY, thinking I would update about 100 people. But there were no pictures of her in the hospital, only her at her most powerful, her most beautiful, and think, statements like, if you want to support us, you go out and you be the best version of you. Mm-hmm. And I started being flooded by people telling me how profoundly these had impacted their lives. And all of a sudden, there were thousands and thousands of people, most of whom didn't even know either one of us before all of this, who were following our story and saying how powerfully it had impacted them. So it was almost as if accidentally I started being asked to speak. And of course, I had terrible stage fright, and I thought that's the last thing in the world I ever want to do. But to your point, that as it became apparent to me that there are other people out there whose lives we can touch. This boulder didn't come as a powerful lesson in how to face death. It came as a lesson in how to choose to live.
Yes.
And it became as another way of expressing our gratitude was to pay it forward and brave the haters that might be out there, who might make fun of us or whatever else they might say. Our message, our life, the fact that Skylar continues to this day, we're working, and we know the day will come when she will be independent again. Now she can walk in a rope. She can walk up steps or walk down steps. Or now, for the first time this past month, she was able to literally transfer herself with spotting, but from her wheelchair to the couch. So
wonderful.
Yeah. And it's like, for all of us, instead of staking our happiness on one big goal, when we celebrate 1,000 victories, 100,000 victories along the way to that goal.
Yes.
How much more joy do we have?
Yes. Sharing those small victories and celebrating. Absolutely love that. So Meredith, you have taken this story and you have helped to empower and to bless others. And you have a program where you have 7 steps of transformation. Would you discuss that with us, please?
Sure, absolutely. So from the speaking, people began to ask me if I would actually coach them and train them. And that has become my new passion, aside from my passion of being with my daughter, but to be able to help people go from feeling like they're incredibly stuck or overwhelmed or just miserable, and that they don't even know what their dreams are sometime anymore. They don't know what their calling is. They don't even know sometimes what they love or what their gifts are. To help them first be able to identify that, and then to identify where they are, where they want to go to, why they want to go there, what is their natural rocket fuel, and how are they maybe getting in their own way and slowing down their momentum, so that then we can reboot the things where they've been their own worst enemy, get that out of the way, and then finally unleash those outer game things that they need in order to live the life that they were destined for. So part of this program, part of this coaching includes really 7 tips, 7 things that we focus on. And this is a tiny piece of the coaching, but it's built around the concept that sometimes all we're looking for is that one tiny domino. And sometimes we think we have to go so big that the aha is going to be really big, but sometimes we're just looking for that teeny tiny little dynamo that when we put it into play, it creates an entire room filled with impact, right? An entire life filled. So these are some of those little dynamos actually, that can really impact. And the first is that when you're facing overwhelm, slow down and get clarity. That's because clarity is your power. And that's why the first step out of the grit process is identify, get clarity, write it down. And often this means be brave enough, be bold enough to know that this is possible for you, to know that you can do it, and to know that it will be worth it. So you may need to enlist help, because sometimes no matter who we are, it's like Einstein said, you can't solve the problem with the same mind that created it. You can't read that label from inside the bottle, but get clarity, because clarity is your power. The second thing is, often we stop ourselves really early in the game by asking how. And again, we've got that same mind that's created the problem. So of course that mind can't easily come up with a solution. If it could, we would already be there, wouldn't we? That's right. So we ask how, and we go, I don't know how I would ever do that, or I don't know how that would be possible, or how. When if we were to ask who, so who do I need to be in order to achieve this? What do I need to let go of? And what do I need to learn and grow into and expand? Who has already done this that I might be able to get as a mentor, a model on? Who can assist me in areas that are not my strengths? So who all of a sudden opens all these windows of possibility. And then 3, what are you making your truths, right? That's like one of the things that I ask myself on that airplane. What is the truth? A lot of times when we're feeling overwhelmed, we make truths out of these things like, I tried everything, or it's impossible, right? Or it is what it is, right? Instead of, I'll take, like, for example, one sentence. If I were to say the sentence to you of, my biggest challenge is overcoming adversity, what do you think is the most powerful word in that sentence?
Overcoming for me.
So I'll confess this is a trick question, because all of them, and if you answered this at home, don't feel bad if you didn't come up with the one word that is the most powerful, because all the words are powerful. However, the most powerful word in that sentence is the word is.
That's the 2-letter word.
That 2-letter word, because that is the programming code that defines to your subconscious your truths with a capital T. So whatever you are making your present tense is what you are creating. So when you say, my biggest challenge is, and you fill in the blank, you're saying this is the state of being. This is the foundation of my castle from which all emotions, all decisions, all actions begin, with this reality. So if you want to change that reality, you have to change those truths. So how could you say that in a way that was still authentic and accurate? It could be like, what I'm focusing on right now is overcoming adversity. Or what I'm playing with right now is overcoming adversity, right? Or even, the thoughts I noticed that I had been getting into a pattern of thought that made me feel like I'm constantly hitting adversity. So it's logical to believe that if I can change that, I'll have a different belief. I'll have a different expectation, right? There are many, many ways that you can turn that around and begin opening doors instead of, slamming the door of the fortress closed, right? And the fourth piece is to remember the power of our bodies. We have physical bodies for a reason. They're able to energize us. When we change our physical state, when we move around, when we go outside, when we go into nature, it releases things in our body that physically make us happier. So to remember when you're feeling overwhelmed, the last thing to do is go and crawl in bed and put the covers over. That's the time to be dancing it out or moving that body, get your body to help you. And of course, feeding it well, right? Fifth is meditation. And meditation can be prayer. Meditation can be walking out in nature. To me, meditation is a blanket concept that talks about deliberate focus, practicing your focus. Because of course, anything that you don't practice, if you practice letting your mind just go wherever it wants to go, well, then of course you'll feel like you have no control over your thoughts because that's what you've been practicing. Whereas if you consistently put yourself into a situation, an environment such as meditation, where your mind starts to wander and then you pull it back, you start to understand that you're capable of it. And then when you're out of meditation, you start to realize when you're aware that your mind's going down a rabbit hole you don't want it to, you can pull it right back. Right?
I love that. I love that. And that's why my devotional time in the mornings is just so important and such a great beginning for my day, knowing that I've spent time with God and that He has given me the focus that I need to accomplish the things in which He has given me to accomplish in that day. So absolutely, meditation, prayer, devotion, great way to start the day.
Yes. And then the last two, the number 6 would be, what are you making this mean in your story? And this goes back to what I shared with you on the airplane. What was I going to make this mean in the context of my life? Whatever was going on now, is it an end or is it a beginning?
Wow.
Right? Is it an end or is it a beginning? And if it how does it make you feel? And if it doesn't make you feel good, why are you choosing to make it mean that? Is there another version of this story? Right? And even things that you may have trouble feeling grateful for. There were some things in my life that were so painful that even though I knew I should feel grateful for it, it was really challenging to feel grateful for it. And yet one of the greatest gifts that God gave me in this experience was, as I was actually literally sitting in the little church in the hospital when I got the blessing of looking back at one of those things that had happened. And I realized that in the magnificence of it all, of this beautiful grand plan, had I not felt those blistering emotions that I felt, the sorrow, the tears, had I not felt them exactly the way that I did, I would have not begun questing for the things that I began questing for. I would have not been the person who became the perfect person to be my daughter's mom in this moment.
That's good.
And so the majesty of this big plan, right? So we don't know. We think we know sometimes, but even in those terrible moments, we may have a point in our life we look back and realize those were our greatest gifts. Right?
Absolutely. So beautifully stated. And I love the questions, Meredith, that you have given throughout your story. That it just goes to show us that the questions that we ask ourselves are so very important for the results that we want to see.
They sure are. The questions, our inner dialogue, I think our inner narrative really defines our life, or how we experience our life, right? Because we spend 24/7 with ourselves, right? And so it's really going to create the colors of the masterpiece. And so number 7, kind of along those lines, is don't mistake unfamiliarity and not done yet for fear, and it can't be done.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah. Because I think we're conditioned to fear, right? And we have some emotion that we start, some actually a feeling within us that we get in the habit of labeling fear, when it can be simply newness, unfamiliarity. It can be exhilaration. It can be that feeling of, I'm on the cusp of something important. Pay attention here. Pay attention.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Well, what a great story and a great journey you have taken us on today. And I want to close by asking you one final question, and then I'll have you come back and share with our listeners how they can get in contact with Meridith Alexander.
Sure.
So Meridith, you've shared some great content today, some great value bombs. The auditorium was full of people that came to hear your story. Millions of people have heard Meridith's story, and the applause was grand, but now they've all walked away. The curtains have closed. The auditorium is empty except for you. And as you began to walk away, Meridith, what are 3 important points that you hope the audience walked away with?
That's such a beautiful story creation. I think the first thing that I would love for anyone who's listening to this or has ever heard me talk or speak would be to take away that ordinary people is where the real greatness lies, right? And that these boulders that come into our lives as ordinary people, that these boulders aren't coming to destroy us. They are often coming to destroy the things that we've been allowing to hold us back.
Wow.
So that would be a big one. That would be a big one for me. And along those lines as well would be, if you're listening to this, never, ever, 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 ever let anyone, especially yourself, limit what you believe could be possible, right? Impossible is such a transitional term, and we've seen that in our generation more than anything, right? So if it seems impossible, why not make it your I'm possible?
Absolutely.
Right? Such a huge one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And with God, we know that all things are possible. So when we depend on Him, we can say, instead of it being impossible, I'm possible. Absolutely.
Yes. And that just perfectly segues into, I think, what would be number 3 for me. And that would be to ask. Ask and it is given, right? Do not ever feel that there is weakness in asking for help. Yes. Asking for help. We have the opportunity to be the catalyst for great things within one another. And so whether it is, and ask for help, again, with empowering questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Empowering questions,
Yes.
like we explored. And ask, there's a time to ask, say, people in your family, but there's also a time to ask people who have lived what you want to live, right? Who have lived what you want to live, or who have learned something that you want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Go find the mentors. There are times when
Yes.
find the mentors, find the coaches, find the group of people who share that vision of I'm possibility. Sometimes people who love us, their way of showing that love and expressing that love is something that hides our light under a basket inadvertently, because they think they're protecting us, and they want from the deepness of their heart for us to feel no pain and no wrong. And they have fear because they don't have our vision. So sometimes when you know that you are destined for more, when you know that things have to change, and you know that you cannot look back even 6 months from now and wake up not madly, passionately in love with this morning that you're waking up to, then you have to take that step, and you have to take that first step forward if you want to transform your impossibilities into your unpossibilities.
Very, very well stated. Thank you. Our best for you and Skylar, and I'm sure that you and I will keep in touch, because I would love to continue to watch her journey as she recovers, and even have her come on next time. And
we would love it.
Great. So Meridith,
it.
how can our listeners contact you?
So I would love to offer to your listeners, if you know that you do want to wake up in the morning and feel that just a brighter, more powerful version of you, and you know that it is your time to ask, I would gift you what I call a 20-minute power whoosh. And so for 20 minutes, you and I would connect on a Zoom call, and I will do whatever I can to steer you in the right direction, guide you, uplift you, whatever. Or if you feel that you want to take a next step and actually have me work with you, to schedule that 20-minute power whoosh, all you have to do is reach out to me on bit.ly, which is bit.ly/power whoosh. And I am here to serve and uplift you. So that is bit.ly/power whoosh. And that would be my gift. Otherwise, you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram, Meridith Alexander with 2 I's, and on LinkedIn, and of course on my website, gritmindsetacademy.com.
I love that. Love that. Well, what a joy it has been to share our time today with you, Meridith. And I will put in the show notes so that everything that they need to contact you. And thank you for the gift of the 20 minutes for our listeners. I admonish you to take advantage of this. Take advantage of the free gift that Meridith has offered, and just begin to live in such a powerful way, such a positive way, that you're excited about the journey that God has you on. So Meridith, thank you again. And we just look forward to hearing more great things happening for you and for Skylar. So to our listeners, thank you again. And Meridith, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for listening, everyone. It has been a true joy and a pleasure. So bless you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you are interested in being on the show, go to phyllisjenkins.com. You can also sign up for the Powerful Journey Masterclass or the Speakers Academy at phyllisjenkins.com.